So we're going to start with the notes. Let me move this up so we don't get confused here. So we're in the note packet right now. If you didn't number your pages when we were numbering them, just look for the page at the top that says 6.3, Solving Systems by Eliminations Harder. Yesterday we did the easy ones. Notice it's not hardest or hard, just harder, a little harder. And so here's what's going to be different from yesterday. Yesterday, it was nice. We just added down and one of the variables went away right away. That's cool. But that's not always going to happen. So you may notice if you take a quick look at the two examples, if you try to add down right away, no variable is going to cancel out. 9 minus 3 does not cancel out x. Negative 3 plus negative 2 does not cancel out y. So what happens if this goes on? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, step 1. You've got to multiply one entire equation by a constant. Now again, a constant is just a fancy math word for a number. Okay? So either the x or the y terms are opposite. So here's how I like to do that. I'll always look at whatever the first variable is. So for this first one, I'm looking at my x's. And I'm going, okay, if you look at the smaller number, is there a number I can multiply 3 by to get to 9? Does 3 times some number get me to 9? 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the bottom equation by 3. You're like, okay, so why am I doing that again? Because, watch and be amazed, if we multiply that 3 through, if we distribute it, I get negative 9x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6y. And 3 times 8 is 24. Now, at first, that may be like, okay, great, I did some work. But what did that actually do? Here's what that actually did. Okay, so this is step 1. I'm going to rewrite this. So the first equation I'm doing nothing with. The second equation, this is my equation now. I multiplied it through. Here we go. And here's what I'm hoping you notice at this point. Now, it's just like the problems that we were doing yesterday. Because now, if I add down, 9 plus negative 9 cancels. It's 0. Negative 3 plus negative 6, again, if that is not a strength, no worries. Negative 3 plus negative 6. Uh-oh. Oops. There we go. Is negative 9y. Negative 15 plus 24 is positive 9. We're down to one variable. We made one be eliminated. Had to go away. And now we've just got our one-step equation. To solve for y. So that one step that we made at the beginning to multiply the second equation by 3, so I had positive and negative 9, that's what simplified this and made it easier. So that's why we say it's a little bit harder, in quotes, than it was yesterday, but still nothing terrible. So my last job now, you're like, oh my gosh, we're not done. No, we got one more variable to find. Substitute the value that you found in step, that shouldn't say 1, that should say 2, back into one of the equations and solve. Either equation works. Yesterday, we just used the top one every time. That's what I'm going to do again. So I'm going to start writing this top equation, copying it, until I get to the variable that I now have an answer for. And I'm going to take that number and plug it in for the variable. Everything else, the 9x, the minus 3, the negative 15, they all stay the same. We just replace the y value because now negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. And now we're back doing first semester Algebra 1 things. Is it going to be a bit tedious at times? Yup, it is. But that's why we have these examples here to help us. Because that way, when you get stuck, and inevitably you will at some point, you'll have something to lean back on. So step 1, multiply one of the equations to make a variable disappear. Step 2, add down, just like we did yesterday. Now we've eliminated a variable, we can solve for the other one, and then we just plug the answer back in to get our second variable. It seems like a lot of stuff. But again, as we work at it a little more, it'll get a little easier. Speaking of, okay, example 2. Now, it doesn't always mean that the first one is going to be the one we can do. Can I multiply 3 by something to get 5? No, not unless we did like a decimal or something. We don't want to do that. So x doesn't look like our best option. Can I multiply 2 by something to get 4? Okay. I can multiply. That's right. If I just made it 2, that would be a problem. Because if I went through and I just did 2, this is why I'm doing it on a sticky note, so don't write this. I'd have 4y up here. 2 times 2y would also be 4y, and if I added them up, the y doesn't go away. So like Landon mentioned, if that's going to be a problem, we may have to make it a negative sometimes. Because again, our goal here in step number 1 is to create an equation. Let me distribute my negative 2 through here. Negative times negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. And negative 2 times 16 is negative 32. I am a fan personally of doing these steps separate, not trying to combine them and go in a rush, because that's what gets me in trouble. So I didn't touch the top equation this time. Sometimes I may have to. So that stayed the same. Here is my new second equation. And I can start to see the benefit of what I did before. Because now when I add them together, I still got some x's, but 4y and negative 4y cancel. That's the whole idea. And negative 32 and negative 12 is negative 44. And I'm very quickly down to a one-step equation. Still got to be careful with signs and things, though. And so once I've got that x again, I have my choice. I can plug this into either one. I'm just going to keep rolling with the top one. I personally am a creature of habit. So I'm going to stick with the top equation. I'm just going to make a note of that here. And I'm going to start writing it. Take note of the variable you solved for here. I solved for x. So I'm going to be substituting for x. So x gets replaced with -4. And then I just copy the rest. Top equation, -4 in for x. Everything else identical. Because now I can turn it into a regular old two-step equation that we've been doing for what seems like a full year, even though it's only been a semester. Do my opposite of what doesn't have the y, so plus 20 to get rid of the minus 20. -12 plus 20 is 8. And get to my answer. So kind of in review here, even though we're going to look at a couple of things on the practice, once you get to step 2, that's what yesterday's basically was. You saw yesterday's lesson blended in. We just started at step 2. So as we're doing the problems today, there's going to be a mixture of them. I'm always going to check first to see, can I add down right away, and get rid of a variable. But if I can't, I got to multiply one of them. That's going to be what we're up to with this today. And as I was saying before we started recording, once I get to my prep period here in a couple of hours, I will have all the notes that we have done so far updated on the front page of Classroom in case you've missed something. You get to use these on the quiz. So make sure they're updated before we have that quiz. Now, as far as practice goes, we're going to be working on pages 9 and 10 today. And what I'm going to want you to take note of, I just want to look here quick to see. Ooh, was I that straightforward? I think I was. Okay. So I'll give you a heads up. All of the problems today, I decided, I guess, not to mix them. You are going to have to multiply one of your equations for each of these. So let's see here. I'm just seeing if there's any weird ones so we can deal with that right away. Okay. So let's play with the first couple. There's a couple of different things going on here. So first things first, step number 1. Let me have this for a reference. Always look at the smaller and the larger number. So can I multiply 5 by something to get to 10? Yeah. What? We've got to multiply 5 times 2 to get to 10. So job number 1. We're going to multiply that 2 times each of those terms. And once we do, move this out of the way for a minute here. we're going to rewrite that equation here. We're on step 2 now already. And then just recopy the other one. We're not doing a thing to it. And we're going to add them up. Because now, by doing that 2 that we multiplied by in step 1, negative 10 plus 10 goes away. 2 plus 3 is 5. 12 plus negative 7, or 12 minus 7, is also 5. And we've got that one-step equation that we're looking for. We're just going to divide by 5. So multiply to get something to cancel. Take it from there. So I look and I'm like, okay. Last step. Again, either equation works. I'm sticking with what I know. I'm sticking with the top equation. I'm going to start copying until I get to the y. When I get to the y, I'm going to replace it with the y value. So since it's just y, just plug the 1 in. You could have done it for the second one if you wanted. So now my only job that's left and that last step, positive divided by negative is negative. And we're there. So this time, the x's were able to cancel out. And in case you were wondering, sometimes you're going to have an option. We also could have multiplied this first equation by negative 3 if we wanted to get rid of y. Sometimes you won't have that flexibility. Sometimes you will. So, don't think it's going to necessarily be that way every time. And I know I said we're going to do 1 and 2. I think 1 and 3 would be a better play here because we get to see one other different thing. So that's the way we're going to roll here. So 3, same idea. Can I multiply 8 by something to get to 10? Because it's always, can I multiply the little number to get big? Not really. What can I multiply 3 by to get to 9? 3. But as we ran into before, yeah, if I just did 3 times negative 3 would be negative 9. They'd be the same. They're not going to cancel. So in this case, it needs to be negative 3 that I'm multiplying through by. Okay, so my step 1, multiply each of those values by negative 3. Watch your signs. Use the calculator if need be. That's fine. Get that distributed out. So I'm just going to copy that down. My second equation, I didn't do anything to. And sometimes it may be the bottom equation that you've got to multiply it by. So I get that taken care of. I add down. Negative 24 plus 10. I owe my friend 24 bucks. I pay him 10 back. I owe 14. My positive and negative 9 now cancel. And when I add negative 63 and negative 21, we get negative 84. You will come out with whole number answers for these. I'll just give you a heads up. So in case you're like, can I get a fraction this time? Not with these. At least not for today. Divide by the negative 14. I get my value in there. I get my whole number. I get my 6. And then to finish it up, again, pick your favorite original equation. And I'm going to write until I get to x. When I get to x, I'm going to replace it with my answer from part 2. Multiply that out, and here we go. Back to semester 1 business again. The opposite of positive 48 would be to subtract it out. Again, colors can be nice at times. That's why I got some in the back. I'm going to try and get some more in with some of the thinner pens. But again, just taking your time, using the calculator when you need it, and letting the other work is going to be something that's going to pay dividends for you as you move ahead. So again, your job is to play with these others now that you've got some guides to work with. Again, if you're looking for the extra work day, use your time well today, because if it's not used well today, we will just roll into the review tomorrow, which isn't the most bad thing ever. It just is something a little different. So